Before the car became something ordinary in driveways, traffic jams, family memories, and late-night roads, it was something much more dangerous and much more seductive. A machine that promised freedom from the pace of the body. Long before highways, before suburbs, before road trips and rush hour and parking lots, people were still living inside the old limits of distance. You walked, you rode, you waited, and then, somehow, a noisy machine of metal, fuel, and nerve began moving faster than a horse without needing one. Because the history of the car is not only the story of an invention, it is the story of how human beings changed their relationship with distance, work, desire, and time itself. Before the car, movement still belonged mostly to older rhythms. People traveled by foot, horse, carriage, rail, or boat. That world could still be rich and connected, but most daily movement remained physically limited, weather-dependent, and often slow. Distance had weight. A town felt like a town because leaving it was not effortless. A job, a family visit, a delivery, or a journey all demanded planning. That is where the emotional truth of the car begins. It did not merely make travel faster, it changed what ordinary people believed was reachable in a day, in an hour, or in a lifetime. The story did not begin all at once with the modern gasoline car. Experiments with self-propelled road vehicles go back much earlier, including Nicolas-Joseph Cugnot's steam-powered vehicle in 1769, which the Library of Congress identifies as the first self-propelled road vehicle. But those early machines were not yet the practical automobiles that would reshape everyday life. They were signs that the dream existed before the solution did. Human beings already wanted motion that did not depend on animal strength. They just had not found the right machine yet. Then came the real turning point. Britannica states that Karl Benz designed and in 1885 built the world's first practical automobile powered by an internal combustion engine, and the Mercedes-Benz company history notes that on the 29th of January 1886, Benz applied for the patent that is often treated as the birth certificate of the automobile. That matters because the car was no longer a fantasy, a steam oddity, or a theoretical sketch. It was now a practical machine that could carry a person on the road under its own power. And that was the first great transformation. The road stopped, belonging only to muscle and animal force. It began belonging to the engine. That shift is easy to underestimate now because the car became so common. But it was revolutionary. Once a self-propelled road vehicle truly worked, distance began to lose some of its old authority. A person could move without feeding a horse, without waiting for a rail schedule, without relying on another living creature's endurance. The machine turned fuel into motion and gave the individual a new form of reach. But early cars were still not ordinary objects. They were expensive, temperamental, mechanically demanding, and often closer to experiments or luxuries than to mass tools of daily life. The automobile was exciting, yes, but also fragile, noisy, and uncertain. That is one of the deeper truths of technological history. An invention can be world-changing in principle long before it becomes world-changing in practice. The car had been born, but not yet democratized. That next shift is where Henry Ford enters the story. Britannica notes that Ford produced several car models before the Model T, which appeared in 1908 and became the vehicle most closely associated with his name. The Model T mattered not only because it was a car, but because it was designed to be simple, sturdy, and broadly useful. It helped move the automobile away from being a toy for the wealthy and toward becoming a machine that many more people could realistically hope to own. And then came the assembly line. Britannica states that in 1913, Ford's company displayed the complete assembly line mass production of motor vehicles, using a conveyor system and dividing labor into repetitive specialized tasks. Smithsonian likewise notes that Ford fully implemented the moving assembly line in 1913. This changed everything because it did not just make cars. It changed the price, the speed, and the very social meaning of car ownership. The Model T's price fell dramatically, from $950 in 1909 to $360 in 1916, according to Britannica. That was the automobile's great revolution. It stopped being mainly an object of wealth. It became an object of mass life. And once that happened, the car began reorganizing society around itself. Jobs could be farther from home. Towns could spread outward. Rural isolation changed. Personal mobility became a private capability rather than only a public service. The car did not simply move people through the world. It changed the shape of the world people built for themselves. Maybe that is the hidden twist in the history of the car. The car was not only a machine of transport, it was a machine of rearrangement. It rearranged cities, labor, desire, dating, shopping, tourism, logistics, and family life. Once ordinary people could drive themselves where they wanted, when they wanted, the old patterns of settlement and routine began to loosen. A home no longer had to sit so close to the workplace. Stores no longer had to rely only on foot traffic. A journey could become spontaneous. Freedom began to feel mechanical. This is partly an inference, but it follows directly from the mass spread of affordable cars and the broad historical transformation they caused. But the car also carried darker consequences. As the University of Michigan's Automobile and the Environment History explains, the Model T and the rise of mass automobility helped entrench the internal combustion vehicle as the standard and fueled the growth of the petroleum industry. More cars meant more roads, more fuel demand, more pollution, more accidents, and eventually more dependence on oil. The automobile expanded freedom for many individuals while also creating new systems of environmental and social cost. And yet, even with all of that complexity, the car became deeply emotional. Because cars do not just move bodies, they carry scenes of life. A first driving lesson, a wedding getaway, a family piled into one vehicle for a long trip, a worker driving home exhausted, a parent waiting in the pickup line, a teenager alone with music for the first time, a late-night confession in a parked car, a final drive through a city before moving away. The car became a small moving room, a private world on wheels. That is part of why the automobile gained such power in culture. It was not just public infrastructure, it was intimate space. This emotional meaning is an inference, but it is grounded in the car's central place in everyday modern life. Over time, the automobile kept changing. Early luxury and brass-era cars gave way to stronger industrial systems, a broader range of manufacturers, safer designs, and specialized vehicle types. The Smithsonian Automobile Collection highlights how early public models from Oldsmobile, Cadillac, Franklin, and Autocar were among the first cars offered to buyers, showing how quickly the automobile moved from fragile novelty into a competitive industry with recognizable brands. The car was no longer one invention. It had become a world of categories, identities, and aspirations. Then the car changed the landscape itself. Roads expanded, fuel stations appeared, motels emerged, repair culture grew, suburbs spread, and the logic of cities increasingly bent around vehicles. That broader transformation is part of why the automobile matters more than many inventions that seem technically more impressive. A plane is extraordinary, but most people do not live inside aviation systems every hour. The car reshaped daily geography. It turned parking into architecture and traffic into a permanent social fact. This is an inference from the automobile's mass adoption and the restructuring of life around it. And maybe that is the deepest lesson. The history of the car is not really about engines alone. It is about personal control over movement. That is what made the automobile so seductive. A train can carry you, but not exactly when or where you want. A horse must be fed and managed. A bus belongs to a route. The car tells a different story. Get in, decide, go. That private command over motion changed the emotional meaning of freedom in the modern age. It made independence feel drivable. Today, the car stands in a more complicated place. It remains central to many people's lives, but it also faces questions about congestion, safety, urban design, emissions, and the future of power systems. The old internal combustion model that shaped the 20th century is now being challenged by electric vehicles and new mobility systems. That broader transition is an inference from the environmental and industrial legacy of the car and the now widely recognized costs of petroleum-based transport. Still, when you see a car now, do not see only paint, rubber, glass, and metal. See Cugnot's steam experiment. See Karl Benz's practical 1885 automobile and the 1886 patent. See Ford's 1908 Model T. See the moving assembly line of 1913. See the price dropping until the car could move from luxury toward mass ownership. See the workers, the roads, the gas stations, the family trips, the polluted air, the midnight drives, the endless commutes, the open highways, and the private hopes people placed inside a machine with 4 wheels. Because the history of the car is, in the end, not just the history of transportation. It is the story of how human beings turned motion into personal choice and then built a civilization around that feeling. And maybe that is why the car still fascinates us. Not because it is perfect, but because it taught modern life to move at the speed of desire. CTA, if you stayed until the end, then maybe a car no longer feels like just another machine to you. Maybe it feels more like freedom, memory, work, escape, or one of those inventions that quietly reshaped what everyday life could look like. So, I'd love to hear from you. When you think about the car, what does it mean to you most? Independence, family, ambition, convenience, or something deeper? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story stayed with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for more storytelling videos about the ordinary inventions and intimate technologies that changed human history.